It is the primary piece of legislation in Nigeria, given the extensive reforms which it proposes to an industry that is a significant contributor to the national economy. The PIB contains strong transparency and accountability provisions which will improve Nigeria's oil and gas sector performance and value creation. The PIB will also produce accountable institutions, reassure investors, improve regulation and value creation, which will result in higher production and earnings that can be available for development and improvement in the standard of living of Nigerians. It will also, the crude oil dominates Nigeria's revenue, accounting for around 90% of export earnings. What are the objectives of the PIB? That is the second question. Creating a conducive business environment for petroleum operations. Transforming NNPC into a viable, commercially oriented, and self-sustaining national oil company. It will also institute a strong regulatory framework with increased emphasis on midstream development to create an effective midstream and downstream licensing system. And it will also assist host communities in achieving direct socio-economic benefits from petroleum operations. To also enhance exploration and exploitation of petroleum resources for the benefit of Nigeria. To optimize domestic gas supplies, particularly for power generation and industrial development. To establish a progressive fiscal framework that encourages further investment in the petroleum industry while optimizing the revenue accruing to government. To create two efficient and effective regulatory agencies focusing on upstream and midstream downstream. To promote openness and transparency in the industry, which diversifies the sector, opening up the entire value chain and helping people understand that expansion to the midstream and downstream is even more important than concentrating on the upstream. What are the gains of the PIB to Nigerians? It will create additional infrastructure across petroleum value chain, especially from midstream and downstream. Critical infrastructure that will be developed utilizing the incremental revenue from increased petroleum. Additional infrastructure in the host communities arising from the host community trust, and more businesses are expected to be set up to support increased activities within the petroleum value chain. Greater confidence will be engendered and certainty in petroleum industry, which will lead to increased investment. Nigeria can occupy its place among Committee of Nations who have updated their petroleum industry laws in line with current realities. The bill also enabled a structured monetization of fossil fuel resources before the whole world turns to renewables. The impact on the economy. The multiplier effect of increased activities within the petroleum industry, especially the midstream and downstream. Increased penetration and utilization of gas for domestic purposes will save the environment and lead to healthier population. Increased employment, prosperity for Nigerians from increased activities and more businesses coming into the tax bracket. Increased activity will lead to incremental collaboration within the petroleum sector, which will drive innovation, travel technology, technology transfer, etc. Where are we now in passing the PIB? As you may all well know, the PIB has passed second reading at both the Senate and House of Representatives. Public hearings have been held at both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Feedback from the public hearings have been received and considered. Consultations with critical stakeholders, especially the host communities, the organized private sector, and other government ministries have also occurred. Overall aim is to enrich the bill so that the content, the aspirations of a majority of the views of critical stakeholders, while ensuring that the objectives are achieved. The National Assembly has expressed the intent to pass the PIB into law by April 2021. Every effort is being made to support the National Assembly to meet this target. Thank you once again, gentlemen of the press. For a clear-cut, thank you. A clear-cut transition from fossil or fuel to renewable energy. Number two, we also believe that the provision of 10% acreage rent to subsidize petroleum exploration in the frontier basins for reserve tend to move towards settling political issues and addressing the critical problems of solving the nation's economic challenges. Because they also believe that whatever gain you derive from such explorations may not last beyond 2030. And finally, NAITI, a federal government agency, believe that our savings from petroleum has not been properly addressed, since we're still insisting or remaining with the issue of fiscal rules, which has to do with excess crude. That's the only savings we have as it is for now. You may want to clear the issues, because they say Angola, a small country like Angola, set aside 10% of their daily earnings from production as compulsory savings. These few questions, I want you to look at them, sir. Thank you very much.
No, it's not. Okay, thank you very much. So I want to seek some clarity to a few activities that you're. Okay, Nigerian Tribune. My name is Dr. Leon Usigbe. In July 2018, Nigeria and Niger agreed to build a pipeline to bring crude oil from Niger to the proposed Katsina refinery. Both projects were to cost $2 billion. Then in 2020, Nigeria and Niger signed a deal on petroleum products transportation and storage. And looking at it, it got me a little bit confused. What is Nigeria intending to do with these deals? Is it to import crude oil from Niger to the proposed Kaduna refinery? Or we are just looking at petroleum products and storage? You may want to give us, apart from clarity, give us an update. What is the extent of these two deals that Nigeria signed with Niger Republic? Thank you.
Honourable Minister, my name is Felix Onwa. I'm from Reuters. My question is, will Nigeria allow Shell and Eni to keep the license of OPL 245 despite many corruption allegations, or will it rescind it or decline the renewal?
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Juliana Taiwo Baloyan of the Sun newspapers. My question is, why is government saying deregulation and privatization on one hand, and at the same time budgeting billions to repair refineries?
Who's next?
Thank you very much, gentlemen of the press. Let me introduce some members of my team so that you will not be surprised when I throw some of the questions to them. To my left, you are seeing the Executive Secretary of the PTDF is with me here to also take some of your questions, and of course the GMD. The first question here that you asked is the PIB, but the PIB has not addressed the issue of transition from fossil fuels to renewables adequately. I would like to throw this question to, I will allow the ESPTDF to take this question. The GMD will take the next question, then I'll take the rest. So the issue of the provisions of transition from fossil fuels to renewables.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Gentlemen of the press, the whole bill actually is predicated on the understanding that we're coming to the end of fossil fuels. Our estimation is that we're going to have a window, let's say, of at most 20 years to continue to use fossil fuels, because the whole world is transiting to a greener, more carbon neutral situation. But we cannot just throw away the oil. We have to make optimal utilization of that resource within the time that's available to us. So the drafting, the design of the bill is predicated on the fact that what can we do within this window to be able to optimally utilize the resources. One, to provide the means of transition to the nation. Second, to create linkages with the rest of the economy. And that's why, if you notice from the speech of the minister, and if you look at the bill itself, there is a lot of emphasis on two things: the mid and downstream and gas. The midstream is where value is created. The midstream is where linkages with the rest of the economy are created. And the whole idea is the midstream will provide us with fertilizer, with power, with gas-based industries. And this is what will lead to the necessary growth of the economy to be able to move seamlessly into a new era of low carbon utilization. But beyond that, gas is the bridge between the current fossil fuel-based present and to the future, which is greener. And for a long time, we have not paid a lot of attention to the gas resources, the enormous gas resources that are available to this country. And that's why much of the emphasis, if you go through the document, will be on how do we bring gas to bear. So moving from an oil-dominated economy to a gas-based economy. And that's why the minister has done a lot in declaring the next 10 years to be the years of gas. And the PIB try as much as possible to capture this aspiration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, when I was to take the next question, which is on the provision of 10% for frontier development, frontier exploration.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, gentlemen of the press. As my colleague, Dr. has mentioned, when you are transiting, you are looking at all options. And one of the things that you must do is to produce any oil that is available or gas as soon as possible. And you continue to find oil as proximate as is possible to its consumers, and that makes you competitive. And it's our target also to increase nation's reserve as even the energy transition conversation proceeds. Therefore, exploration for oil in the frontier basis is a very prominent part of our agenda. And obviously, you must have resources to do this. Typically, in every frontier basin, governments or national institutions do take care of those requirements. They mature the basin so that others can come and take the commercial position on it. To that effect, there's ample provision in the petroleum industry legislation for us to fund the activities of the frontier exploration agency. It doesn't have to be 10% of anything, but the provisions that we have made is for it to have provisions of the licensing, that is the cost of renewal of licenses will be the percentage will be provided, made available for frontier exploration. I would think it is adequate, and it will be situated within the control of the Commission, which is the upstream regulator.
Thank you. And let me also still go back to, is it on now? The issue of transitional provisions from fossil fuels to renewables. What this bill is called, please let's pay attention. What this bill is called is the Petroleum Industry Bill. So we're looking at petroleum laws. And as the ES said, we are not really in the race to renewables as a country, and even as a continent, we are not really very much in the race to renewables. Let's look at where we have our comparative advantage. Our comparative advantage today, as far as energy is concerned, is in the area of oil and gas. We have a lot of gas in this territory. Unfortunately, we have not focused on gas. And gas is considered to be a cleaner fuel. In fact, some people are beginning to discuss gas not as a transition fuel, but as a destination fuel. So it is actually also being considered as a renewable fuel. So what we are doing in the PIB is to move the focus from oil to gas. And there is ample provision, as you know, in the PIB for this. I mean, that provides for this movement from oil, this focus on oil to gas. In fact, we have a whole regulator now that is focused on the midstream. We have actually separated, created two regulators for the sector, one dedicated to the upstream and another dedicated to the midstream, which is mostly gas. So we are really focused on that. And we should now begin to see gas as part of renewable fuel, at least in our own context. And that's what I always advocate internationally. I say, look, they cannot expect to pigeonhole us and then say we should go into biofuels. We are not really, that is not our area of strength. We will concentrate as a country in our area of strength, which is gas. And that's really where we have the provision. Okay, even if they consider gas as a transition fuel, then we are going to be very strong in that area. But of course, we have a timeline. The outlook is that oil is going to account for about 50% of the global energy mix in the next 20 years. So let us try and see how we can focus and get out as much oil as possible so that we are not able to, we will not be left with too much oil in the ground when the global world, when the rest of the world has moved away from oil. And that brings us to the next question of frontier basin. That is why we must make sure that we go everywhere we can find oil to get it. And it is called frontier territory. That means it is a new territory. It is not explored yet. So you don't expect business people to go and risk everything. We as government must lead the business so that we can at least prove the territory. And once we are able to prove that territory, then other investors will come in and take over. That is the whole idea. That's why we are saying, let us go there. Let us find as much oil today as we can find, because coal did not finish in the world before the world moved on. If we do not produce the oil, the world will move on and we'll have the oil in the ground. That's why we say, look, let us now go ahead. There is a lot of new technology now. Oil is being found in places where we could not find it before because there was no technology for it. Now the technology exists. Let us go around the whole country, not only in the Northeast, we're going around the whole country to look for oil now, so that whatever oil we have in the ground is produced before the world moves beyond oil. Now, Nati, you said, believes that our savings in petroleum have not been addressed. Well, I think this issue of excess crude is not an issue that I can discuss because it's a national issue, a structural issue. I would say that I cannot really go deeply into discussing this issue of Nati and savings from crude and so on. That is not really within my purview, if you agree with me. Next, you said there was an agreement between Nigeria and Niger to bring oil to Nigeria, to a refinery, and then there was another agreement between Nigeria and Niger. Well, you know that Niger is a smaller country. In terms of oil, it is also younger because Nigeria is more experienced in this sector than most countries in Africa. So you find out that some of these countries have their constraints. Of course, we have this agreement with Niger, but they have their constraint as to how to deliver the crude because of the contracts they have with the Chinese. So if we realize that they have constraints, we can change. So the whole idea is Niger has a 20,000 barrels per day refinery, which is even bigger than their consumption. And there is already a lot of illegal trading going on between the Niger and Nigeria border. So what we want to do is to see how we can legalize it. Niger is our neighbor, just like every other neighbor. We want to begin to create business with our neighbors. What ECOWAS is trying to encourage and what AU is trying to encourage is inter-regional trade so that we can begin to trade among ourselves. So if Niger Republic has something that they have excess of, then we can buy from them. So that already Nigerians are buying from them. So why don't we legalize it? That is the whole idea. So, and of course, Nigeria has a lot that Niger is also buying as well. We are just trying to encourage inter-regional trade between with our neighbors It doesn't matter whether it's Niger, it can be Chad, it can be Benin Republic. Let us try as Africans and West Africans to begin to trade among ourselves. That's what we are trying to encourage. You talked about OPL 245, whether it will allow Shell and ENI to keep this asset. We are still discussing with the legal people. We know that there is already a judgment, but the Attorney General is still discussing with us, and they are looking at the judgment, and of course, we'll come back to you with the interpretation of the Attorney General on this matter. The regulation was deregulation and privatization. Why are we still going, if we are deregulating and we are talking about privatizing, why are we going ahead with rehabilitating the Port Harcourt refinery? I think everything goes together. I have always said in all my interaction with the media that one of the reasons why our refineries cannot function is subsidy. Because you cannot be refining at a cost and selling at a subsidized rate. Now that constraint will be taken away by deregulation. That is the more reason why we must fix our refinery, so that our refineries can now function optimally. So the two go together. And in terms for privatization, I always say, look, what is better? To privatize a non-functioning refinery or to privatize a functioning refinery? A functioning refinery will definitely fetch more for the government than a non-functional refinery. That is why we feel that we have to rehabilitate this refinery, and then government will decide what to do with it, whether to privatize it or whether to commercialize it, whether they want to concession it. That is for government to decide, but that will be the next at the next level. But at this point, we want to give Nigerians a functional refinery. Unfortunately, I keep saying I don't understand this about Nigerians. Nigerians have always asked this question: when our refinery is going to function? Now we are telling you your refinery is going to function, and then everybody has become an expert on refineries. Dino Malaye is also an expert on refineries, gentlemen. What does he know about refineries? It is not me that took the decision to give the refineries out on the contract. We have experts that are working with government that looked at it. They analyzed the bids. So it wasn't me that analyzed the bids. It wasn't even the GMD of NNPC that analyzed the bid. It was experts that analyzed the bids. So if you want to talk to the expert, then go and talk to the experts. But you don't come out and become an expert yourself when you are not an expert. Because at least I am very clear, if there is nobody I know, I am very sure that Dino Malaye is not an expert on refinery. So it's unfortunate, but what we are going to give Nigerians is a functional refinery. What will come after that will be also another discussion. Thank you, distinguished gentlemen of the press.
Honourable Minister, my name is DJ Lumoye. I write for these day newspapers.
Sorry, you were saying? I didn't hear him, sorry.
I said my name is DJ Lumoye. I write for these day newspapers. Yes, during the public during the public hearing for the PIB recently, the host communities raised some objections to the provisions of the bill. Particularly, they were complaining about the 5% reserve for them. They were conversing for 20%. And between then and now, I wouldn't know whether the executive has been able to reach out to the National Assembly as regards the issue. What really is the government doing about that? Because they said that the Republican, especially at the House of Representatives, they said they won't allow the bill to function if their interests, if they are not carried along, especially as regards jacking up the percentage from 5% to 2%. Thank you.
Yeah.
Honourable Minister, sir. Honourable Minister, sir. My name is Yemi Adebayo from AIT. My question is going to toe the line of Mr. Deji Lumoye, we recently have now. Still talking about these host communities, about the percentage they are asking for. You discover that currently now, the 7th Assembly up to the 8th Assembly have been reducing the percentage. Now we have 2.5%. And they claim that they are the ones who perhaps will bear the brunt of the negative impacts of oil exploration in their communities. What is the government doing in this regard? Is there a plan to actually review some of these issues? Thank you.
Okay, sir. From what you have said today, it shows clearly that a lot has been achieved in the last 1.5 years. My name is Adamu Sambo of the NTA.
Yes, please.
From what you have said today, sir, a lot has been achieved in the last 1.5 years since you came to office. Looking back, sir, what would you say you are most happy about, and what have been the regrets?
Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Umezuke from Channels. Well, speaking of subsidy, I wanted some explanation, some clarification. About 2 weeks ago, PPRA published new pricing for petrol to be sold at retail outlets, ranging between 209 and 212. And so they pegged this, and even landing costs about 189 per litre. And so given that, I mean, subsequently, that was explained that this would not influence price hike, but instead it's just a reflection of market reality. So, but given that, template, we understand that there will be a huge shortfall of about 102 billion for March alone. Can you explain how you intend to sort that out? Because it would mean, logically, that subsidy might be reintroduced. Is this going to be the case or not? Please just explain that to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prime Minister, sir, my name is Ubale Musa. I report for Deutsche Welle Radio. My question has to do with your transition to gas. A concern to me is the price of gas today in Nigeria. Our expectation is that since you are encouraging people to go to gas, there's going to be a knockdown effect on the price of gas. On the contrary, what we are seeing today is hike in the price of gas. The last I bought gas, I think it's about 4,500 for this 12.5 kg. What are you going to do to ensure that you are encouraging local consumption so that there will be that transition, the genuine sense of transition? Thank you.
Can we take these ones now? Before, these are 5%. Thank you very much, gentlemen of the press, again. I don't know. Is it on now? Thank you very much, gentlemen of the press, for all the questions. And the first question is on host communities. The second also is on host communities. And for me, this is a very sore point. So I will not take these questions myself. I will allow my colleagues to take these two questions on the host communities. Because I am also from a host community myself. So I'm an interested party. So let my colleagues take these questions, please.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I think what needs to be clarified in this regard is percentage of what? For the last 20 years, what has been agitated for was 10% of profit from operating companies. Now, what happens if in any wager a company declares a loss? Where are you going to get the percentage from? So when we come to design this particular document, we ask ourselves the questions. There is no doubt something has to be done, especially for the direct benefit of the host communities. But what do you need to do? Do we need to go back to the old issue of 10% of profit? And we ask ourselves, what of the possibility if a company decides one day to say, I don't have a profit? And in this business, it's possible. So we said, what is a permanent source of revenue that can be devoted for the direct benefit of the host communities? We considered a percentage of capital expenditure, but that is going to run for 1 to 3 to at most 5 years. Then we ask ourselves, what is a permanent source? And that's where we zeroed down on a percentage of operational expenditure. Whatever you do, year in, year out, you must have an operational expenditure. And that's what's going to be devoted for that purpose. And if you look at any of the operating companies in this country, the operational expenditure is huge. So from our estimation, 2.5% of that operational expenditure will be very, very adequate for the purposes that they are meant for. Don't forget, this is in addition to many other interventions in the producing communities. To that extent, and in any case, the beauty of the current arrangement is that most of the determination of what is going to happen to this fund is going to come from the communities themselves. It's not a government bureaucracy that will do that, but the moment the fund accrues, the communities will appoint the trustees and the managers of this fund. And in order to ensure that this fund is also optimally used, the law will provide that 75% of that fund must be used for capital expenditure in the affected communities. 20% will be a reserve fund for future use, and only 5% of that fund can be utilized for administrative purposes. We don't want a situation whereby huge bureaucracies will grow around the utilization of the funds, and at the end of the day, you will find that the communities are not benefiting. And it will be just those who are directly managing these funds that will be benefiting. So that's why the law will provide specifically how these funds are going to be utilized. And we believe this is a better deal. This is a better deal for the communities than all the other things that were considered in the past. Because we foresee a situation whereby if we put a percentage of profit, it may not be there. If we put capital expenditure, it will not be there, because after 2-3 years, it's over. You have already embedded all your capital expenditure. But this one is day in, day out. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. The second question also answered.
It's the same thing, actually. It's about the percentage.
Yeah. Well, what I will say, I don't know, you see, what is before the National Assembly is a draft bill. And as you know, this bill is before the National Assembly. So at this point, I don't know whether government can still change the bill because it's already submitted to the National Assembly. Of course, every input is being made to the National Assembly, and we are not saying that what is going to come out from the National Assembly will be exactly identical with what was submitted. So I think these questions are better posed to the National Assembly members. I'm sure that whatever needs to be done will be done at the National Assembly. And what we are hoping for is a bill that will be acceptable to all of us, the executive, the National Assembly, and also, most importantly, our partners. Thank you on that one. And then the other question that was posed by Adamu was, what am I most happy about? Thank you very much, Adamu, for at least recognizing our little efforts. I'm always pleased when somebody somewhere notices the little efforts that we make in our little corner. If you ask me what I'm most happy about, I'm actually most happy about the fact that as Minister of State Petroleum, I've assisted to steer the country away incrementally from oil to gas. Because I believe that that is where our future lies. One of the first things I was very proud of achieving was the Train 7 FID, late 2019. And then, of course, the AKK gas pipeline was one thing I was also very, very happy about. Then, of course, the National Gas Expansion Program, leading to the launching of the auto gas program, and now moving on to the MDCs, the domestic gas program, which will be launched very soon, to the declaration of this decade, the decade of 2021 to 2030 as the decade of gas. So I'm quite happy that we are beginning to steer the country away gradually from oil, because I believe that this is something that we omitted to do as a country for a long time. And this is really where the linkages with the economy happens mostly. You can imagine if we are able to develop from gas to power, from gas to fertilizer plants, from gas to chemical plants, from gas to petrochemicals. You can see the kind of incremental effect it will have on the economy of Nigeria, and the jobs that it will create. I believe that it can create a lot of value. If we want to diversify this economy, the best way, I believe, to diversify Nigeria's economy is to go gas. And I'm very happy and proud that I'm part of a team that has steered this country towards this most important segment of our industry. Thank you. Then the last one, the last question, and I'll leave the other question to the GMD on subsidy and PPPROA. But related to this is the question about gas and transition to gas and the price of gas going up, which I thought should be self-evident. In fact, this is expected, because if you move people towards gas, towards a direction at the same time, what will happen is that it will push up the price initially. Because today, because that sector was neglected, the infrastructure doesn't exist. So people now move towards gas at the same time. So it chokes it up and the prices will go up. And then now the businesses will now see the opportunity. And then now they start developing the infrastructure to move the gas, which was not existing before. The gas that was locked in, was shut in before, will now be produced because people now see the opportunity. Because if I found gas before, I locked it in because I didn't have a market. Now suddenly I see that everybody is going towards gas, so I have to now produce that gas. So now all this investment will come into this sector very soon, and then you see that it will ease out, and then the prices will come down. That is what is expected. So if you are beginning to see that prices are going up, then it only means that our efforts are succeeding. But I can assure you that this is also going to attract a lot of investment to this sector that will very soon push the prices down. So I would like to leave the excess figures now.
First of all, let me go to the end, which is today, NNPC, the sole importer of PMS. We're importing at market price, and we're selling at 162 naira per liter today. Looking at the current market situation, the actual price could have been anywhere between 211 that you have mentioned and around 234 naira to the liter. The meaning of this is that consumers are not paying for the full value of the PMS that we are consuming, and therefore somebody is bearing that cost. As we speak today, the difference is being carried in the books of NNPC, and I can confirm to you that NNPC may no longer be in position to carry that burden because we cannot continue to carry it on our books. That is why early last year, if you recall, the full deregulation of the PMS market was announced, and we have followed this through until we got to September when prices shifted above 145. Some social issues came up, particularly with trade unions and other civil societies, leading to an engagement between us and organized labor, which prevented the eventual implementation of the actual market price of the petroleum product at that time. Those engagements are continuing, and the objective of those engagement is actually not to prevent the regulation, but to make sure that there is sufficient framework on ground to ensure that consumers pay for the actual price of this product and that they are not exploited. And secondly, to also put some relief on the way such that the effect or potential effect of a PMS price increase are not transferred to the ordinary people. And in that respect, as my minister has mentioned, part of it is to deepen the autogas program. The autogas program will be able to deliver alternative fuel for vehicles, including keke napeps, such that the price you will pay for per liter equivalent will probably be about half of that of PMS at its current price, and surely below the 162 naira per liter that we are seeing today. So those engagements have been matured so that we can deliver on the promises of government to make sure that alternative fuel is created. Certain benefits are put on the table which will ease out any pain that will bring. So as we speak today, I will not say we're in a subsidy regime, but we're in a situation where we are trying to exit this subsidy or the underpriced sale of PMS until we come to in terms of the full value of the product in the market. What is also useful is a very good opportunity to also say that PMS today sells across our borders anywhere above 300 naira to the liter, any of our borders, any of our neighbors, and in some places up to 500 to 550 naira to the liter. And I'm sure you have seen in very, very media, I just saw one today that in some countries, the Nigerian fuel is the alternative fuel. In fact, the primary fuel, and we're supplying almost everybody in the West African region. I know also that it's very difficult to continue to afford this because we have our own issues, and that's why eventual exit from this is completely inevitable. When that will happen, I do not know, but I know that there are engagements that are going on. Government is very concerned about the natural impact of price increases to our transportation and other consumer segments of our society. And as soon as those engagements are taken to very logical conclusions, but I'm sure that the market price of these PMS will be allowed to play at the right time. And I hope this answers your question. Excuse me, harmonize the question and say that. Actually, I can let me a PhD, so let me throw it back at you. Yeah. So current consumption is evacuation from our depots about 60 million liters per day. You are selling at 162 naira to the liter. Your current market price is around 234 actual market price today. So the difference between the two multiplied by 60 million times 30 will give you per month. I don't have the numbers now. This is a simple arithmetic that we can do. But if you want exact figures from our books, I do not have it this moment, but it's anywhere between 100 billion and up to 120 billion per month. I don't have an exact number. How what now? I say we're picking it, putting it on the books of NNPC, and we can no longer continue to be. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Who's it? Exactly, but you shouldn't have even gone ahead. Once you have said that, you should do the arithmetic.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Ruth Olurumbi from Bloomberg. My questions are, when will the negotiation with the labor, do you know when that will end? And with DSDP, will it be phased out? And import of fuel, will that be open to private sector? And the last one is that, do you have any updates on the marginal field round? And how much does Nigeria seek to make from signature bonuses? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. My name is Ejiro Renefifen. I report for Ben Television. My question is, at the risk of sounding like a professional in the oil industry, expert, the assumption out there is that these refineries are archaic and they cannot work. And putting money into these refineries is just like carving a rotten wood. As the person that is in charge of information, giving out information, would you say that these refineries, to put that kind of an amount of money into it, is a worthy venture?
Good afternoon, sirs. My name is Hassan Umar Farouk. I report for Liberty Radio and Television. Honorable Minister, sir, in your remarks, you made mention of this PIB bill is going to be passed next month, April. And you also, in your remarks, you said this bill is with the National Assembly. And Nigerians know it has been there for ages. Sir, what gives you this confidence to announce this date? Is there anything new that you guys have done that makes you announce that by next month it will be passed? Thank you very much.
Okay. Is it on now? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Considering that this is going to be the last set of questions, I will just say that the GMD is going to take the question on DSDP, and then maybe part of the question on the engagement with labor. On the issue of marginal fields, I would like to say, I already said in the press before, that the process has been completed. There were 161 winning bids, and they have been notified. And we've started receiving signature bonuses being paid by the winners. At least from my last, from the last account report I got from DPR, almost 50% of the winners have paid. What we were expecting from the whole process was about $600 million. Of course, we also give allowance for people to pay in Naira. So you had to pick which currency you want to pay in Naira or dollar. So at this point, we cannot give a straight figure in any currency. But just to tell you that the payments have been quite encouraging. And they have up to April 20th. So there is still some time. So the jury is still out, but we believe that by April, we would have gotten a lot of them to pay. The next question on the refineries, whether the refineries that are being fixed are cake, is very sad. I don't know whether every time your refinery develops a fault, you must change it. Of course, we have always talked about the maintenance culture in Nigeria. We must maintain what we have. Unfortunately, there have been some challenges in the maintenance of the refineries. But right now, we've gotten it right. And our refineries are not archaic. The refinery in Port Harcourt is in two parts. One, the smaller one, was built in the 1960s, which is not even a very old refinery. Then the bigger refinery, 150,000 barrels, was built by the president when he was president and commissioned in 1989. So a 1989 refinery cannot, by any stretch of imagination, be considered an archaic refinery. It's just that we've had some management challenges, and this government wants to make sure that we put it right and make sure we get our refineries functional. There are refineries that are 105 years old that are in the news today, still functioning. So how can you say that this refinery is old? It's not one of the oldest refineries at all, but we want to upgrade it because you see, in every technology, you know, just like your phones, you have upgrades, alerts for upgrades, and then you upgrade your phones. That doesn't mean that your phone was obsolete. Today, technology is moving very fast. There are all kinds of upgrades coming. So we want to incorporate all those upgrades into this refinery and make it as modern as it can be. So our refinery is not archaic. It is a refinery that will be as good as new when it is fixed. And therefore, I consider it a worthy venture. Was the concluding part of your question, was whether this was a worthy venture. It is a worthy venture because we want to bequeath a refinery that is functional. We cannot, if we were trying to even sell a refinery that is not functional, that's when it should hold us to account. Because it means that government was trying to do 419 by selling somebody a dummy. But we are now saying, let us fix it. Let us know that what we are giving back to Nigerians is a functional refinery. I think we should be encouraged to do this. I mean, the figures, when people talk about 1.5 billion, I mean, if you are talking about building a new refinery now of that size, you are not going to be calling 1.5 billion. Definitely. The GMD will tell you that a new refinery this size will cost us far, far, far more than $1.5 billion. Now, on the PIB, you asked me why I'm optimistic that it's going to be passed in April. Why I'm very optimistic is because I heard from the mouth of no other person than the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives that they will endeavor to pass this bill in April. And from the commitment I have seen from the National Assembly, I believe that they mean every word of it. As I reported, we have done the public hearings, and a lot is going on with the National Assembly. There is a lot of ongoing engagement, which continue to encourage me that this bill will be passed this time in April. And if you say that this bill has been before the National Assembly for a long time, it has not been before the National Assembly for that long, not during this administration. A version of this bill made a journey to the National Assembly and did not arrive at any conclusion. A second version too, I think, went and then came back, it was not assented to. This version, which is the final version, only got to the National Assembly last quarter of 2020. Was it last quarter? Last quarter of 2020. And we have been assured by the National Assembly, and from all indications, from all our engagement with them, we believe that this bill will be passed in April 2021. GMD, can you take the question on engagement with labor and the GSDP?
Thank you very much. If you are referring to implementation of the full deregulation, eventual deregulation, the key issue today now is not really about negotiation with labor, but it's about the promise of Mr. President that we must put a structure that will bring relief to the ordinary people by way of providing alternative and cheap fuel, which we are pursuing vigorously to make sure that the auto gas program of this administration comes to fruition. And also to provide any other support that is necessary to make sure that any changes to price of PMS will not hurt the ordinary people. And thirdly, to make sure that in terms of pricing, you are able to make sure that price is at the best price that is possible in the market, such a way that when oil marketing companies commence import, which I would like to connect this to that question on the oil marketing companies, then we will be in position to assure Nigerians that the price they are paying for is the actual value of the PMS that they are buying. And this also is tied to the question around the DSDP. DSDP is the process that we are using today to essentially sell our crude oil to oil marketing companies, and they will sell back PMS to us in exchange for the crude oil that they are taking from us. This is the framework that is on ground today for the purpose of importing PMS into the country. And because NNPC is doing it 100%, you are seeing all the exposures are with the NNPC. So upon the full implementation of the deregulation, we will expect the oil marketing companies will immediately commence import, even now, so that that burden of import will be taken away from the NNPC, or even the supply, even when local refining is made available. So the NNPC will not be the sole supplier of PMS into this market. So once this situation arises, you will assure that the DSDP program will automatically vanish, because you will have no further need for it, because market forces will now determine the import and export. We know there's one major challenge why oil marketing companies are not started importing, and which is around access to foreign exchange. And we're working on this with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And as soon as that is available, oil marketing companies will also resume import of petroleum product. I hope this answers all your concerns. Thank you.
Member of the high table who has not been introduced, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Nuhu Yakub, Senior Special Assistant to the President's Office of the Chief of Staff in charge of Natural Resources. Sir, Honourable Minister, this event is being streamed online on Facebook, and we just got an online question. I don't know if you'd just like to take it, sir. Naji Hidis says, how is the PIB positioned to tackle the concerns of the oil host communities with the agitation on the management of the host community fund as recommended by the PIB.
Okay. Yeah, I will also give it back again, but this time maybe the GMD will take it since the ES PTDF took it the last time. So GMD, the host communities agitation.
Thank you very much. I think without being repetitive, we know that what we call in the industry license to operate, in this business, you must be able to make sure that the communities in which you operate have a sense of belonging, and then you have a sense of care for them so that you do not destroy the environment, and you also make sure they're empowered to benefit from the resources that is in their vicinity. And that's why my colleague, Dr. Bello, mentioned that we are tying the benefits of the host community directly to the operating expenses of the companies operating in this region. And not only that, we'll make sure that in the provisions on the PIB, that 75% of any collection for the purpose of the host community is put into capital projects. That way you have sustainable development in the host communities, and they would benefit directly from it. So if you look at it in this context, there's no better time than now for us to bring on the table the issues of the host community squarely. We know there are a number of interventions. Let me just say this promptly because I would not like my ministers to speak about this. There are several attempts to bring the issue of the host communities on the table. And it was initially seen from a regional level, which is why you have the NDDC, the derivation provisions in the laws that we have today, and also many other deductions that we make to make sure that these resources go to this committee. So this is, we're also aware that as you do this, because of the structure of those arrangements, they may not directly go to the specific host communities. And that is why we're also making this specific provision so that the host communities will be really in line of sight around what happens in their community, and they can take care of the developments in their region. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Presidential Communication Team, we want to thank the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, the GMD of NNPC and the ES PTDF for coming to answer questions from our very good friends. And we want to thank gentlemen of the press for those very exciting questions. And by the grace of God, we're going to continue again next week. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, this is what you expected.